We are now going to be having 12 shiurim on 12 perakim. These are the 12 perakim of the story of mitzrayim, and I think it's very important before Pesach to get to know these 12 perakim. Now, there's stories and there's medrash and there's teachings from the Gemara that has been gotten around. To know the full story from beginning to end, what the Torah says, what we can learn from the actual psukim, and what actually happened as the Torah says it, I think is very, very important, and that's the purpose of this share. So let's dig in. This is the 12th shiur. This is Perik Yud Beis. We have a lot to do. Let's get to it. In the land of Mitzrayim, saying, this new moon should be for you, Rosh Chodashim, the head of all the months. The Chodashim means a new moon. It should be the head of all the new moons. Before we mentioned that Moshe Rabbeinu was a little baby and he was being kept in hiding, it was for 3 moons. Yerechos. Now we're talking about Rosh Chodashim. Now the Torah is going to call months Chodashim because it has to do with the new moon. It seems to flow that after Choshech, then Hashem talked about this is Nisan, and this is going to be not only the first of all the months, but this is going to be like a new for you because now there's going to be freedom. Rishon hu lachem should be the first one for you. L'chad she'eshana of the months of the year. Dabru el kol adas Yisrael. Lemor, speak to the congregation of Yisrael. Whenever it says adas Yisrael congregation, it's talking about in some sort of religious capacity. Basal chayid hazeh, in the 10th of this month. V'yichu lahem ish seh leveis avos seh labayis. Each person should take, according to his father's household, a lamb for the household on the 14th of the month. The im yimatabayis miyois miseh, but if the house is too small to eat up one lamb, v'lakachu shteik ushchenoi and his neighbor akara that's close, al basis to his house, v'michsas nefashos, according to the calculations of the people there, v'ish lefi achloi, a person according to what they eat, tachaisu alaseh, that's how you calculate this. In other words, you calculate the amount that a lamb could feed, and then that's the amount of people should join in there. And we're going to see why. Seh tamim, it should be a pure lamb. Zachar ben shana, should be a year old. Yilachem for you. Menakvasim, from your sheep. Uben izim, or from the goats. You can take. So if you don't have a little sheep, you can take a little goat. And it's interesting, the Torah calls a little goat also a seh. V'hayu lemishmeres, and it should be for you to guard it ad arba asar yom achadich until the 14th day of this month. The shachatu oisai kol kahal adas Yisrael bein arbayim, and the entire congregation of Bnei Yisrael is going to shecht it in the afternoon. V'lachu min adam, you're going to take a dam, v'nasnu al shtei amzuzos, and put it on the 2 doorposts, v'yal hamashkoif, and on the lintel, the crossbeam, al habatim of their houses, asher yoichlu oisa behem, that they can eat inside them. In other words, if they live there, great. But really, like we just talked about, neighbors might join, so it has to do with where they're going to eat. So the house that they're going to eat in, that's where they should put the blood. The achlu es habasar b'layla hazeh, you're going to eat the basar by night, only at night. Tzli eish matzah umatzos, so you're going to have it roasted, and you're going to have matzos, amorim, on bitter herbs, yoichlu, you will eat it. So this is what we learned, that mar should be multiple types of mar by the Seder, not just one type of mar, but multiple types of mar, because it says al mayurim, and later in Devarim it also says mayurim. What's interesting though is here it says the meat should be roasted, and it says umatzais with matzais al mayurim on mar. The matzah is eaten with the mar, not necessarily is the meat of the lamb going to be eaten with the mar, but the flow of the pasuk also is that you have the matzah and the mar and the lamb, they're eaten all together. Al teichlu menuna, please do not eat from it. Obashal, when it's cooked, mevushal mayim, or when it's roasted in water. Ki im tzali eish, it has to be roasted only on open flame. Roishai, al korov, the al kirbai, the head and its feet and its innards, all on one spit. Do not leave it over till morning. That's why you have to have a group to eat it with, because you're not supposed to leave the meat over till morning. But whatever you do leave till morning, but it's just right food. You have to burn by fire. So here already is a little hint. This is telling us that you should not leave it till the morning, which means Bnei Yisrael will still be in mitzrayim by the morning. A lot of the psukim talk about that Bnei Yisrael were freed at night, and even the mitzrayim wanted to free them at night and push them out. This is one of the psukim that hints that they didn't leave until the morning. The kacha toichlu oisai, and this is how you should eat it. Masnechem chagurim, with your loins girded, in other words, fully dressed. Na'alechem baraglechem, with your shoes on your feet. Umikalchem biyadchem, and your walking stick in your hand. V'yachaltem oisai b'chipazim, and you eat it quickly. Pesachul Hashem, this is the Pesach Hashem. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu say to eat it quickly? The answer is, they really was supposed to eat it until midnight. The problem is, he's afraid if he told them you have to eat it only till midnight, they wouldn't necessarily calculate how to eat it till midnight, and then they perhaps would either eat it way too fast and then leave over, and they would stop way before midnight, or people would eat it after midnight, wasn't sure. So therefore, it wasn't told to eat it specifically till midnight at that time, but he told them to eat it quickly. In other words, don't tarry. When it's nightfall, start eating it and go on. Obviously, they did have a Seder, at least the beginnings of a Seder in Mitzrayim that first night. And our Shadarim these days is a reflection of that first Seder and every Seder that came after and eventually grew to the Haggadah that we have today. And they did not eat it when there was death cries outside, because death cries outside happened after midnight and after. They ate it before midnight, b'chipazon. V'yavarti be'eretz Mitzrayim b'layla zeh, I Hashem, I'm going to go over Mitzrayim on this night, v'kesi kol b'char be'eretz Mitzrayim, and I'm going to strike every firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, mi'adam v'abahema, from man until animal, v'chol alihei Mitzrayim, and every deity of Mitzrayim, esa shafatim, ani Hashem, I'm going to make great judgments, I am Hashem. And his blood should be for you. A sign on the houses, asher atem sham, that you are there. Re'isi as Adam, when I see the blood. Upasachti aleichem, and I will pass over them. V'lo yibochem negev l'mashches, and won't be in them a plague destroyer. B'hakoisi be'eretzrayim, when I strike the land, country of Mitzrayim. And it will be on that day. Lachem zichrain. It should be that for you a remembrance. V'hakoitem, to have a festival, Oisei Chag Hashem, should be a festival to Hashem, Darisechem for generations, Chukas Oilam, this is a eternal statute, Ticha Gohu, to have the festivals. Shivas Yamim Matzos Teichelu, 7 days you will eat matzahs, Ach, B'Yom HaRishon, including the Yom HaRishon, meaning the first full day, the Yom HaRishon, Tashbisu Sa'ar Mibatechem, you will have removed all of the leaven from your houses, which means it has to have been done by Erev Yom Tif, because it's not possible to have a full day of Yom Rishon without any chametz if you didn't clean it out already. So therefore, by Erev Yom Tif would have to have been cleaned. Ki chol oichel chametz. Anyone who eats chametz, nichrusa nefesh ahi mi Yisrael, his soul will be cut off from Yisrael. He'll have kares miyam rishon ad Yom Shvi. From the first day of this festival until the seventh day, will be Yom Rishon. The first day should be a holy convocation. Will be Oy Mashavihi, and the seventh day will be a holy convocation to Hashem. Kol malacha lo yasu b'hem. All malacha you not do. This is the first time they're learning you're not doing malacha. They weren't even given Shabbos yet. They didn't even have Shabbos yet. Shabbos was given to them when they left Mitzrayim, and was told 6 days the mun's going to come down. On the seventh day, you're not going to have any mun. You can have a double portion on Friday. Don't go out and collect it on Shabbos. Before they even had Shabbos, they had Pesach. Including Asher Yechol Chol Nefesh, anything you need to stay nefesh, to eat, hu levade, that alone, yes, lechem, you could do. Ushmartem es hamatzos, and you should guard the matzos, ki be'etzomim zeh, because it was that exact day, hoitzeisi, I took, es voisechem, my legions, Mitzrayim, from Mitzrayim. Hashem is talking about the future tense, past tense, that on that day will have taken them out, ushmartem es yom hazeh, and you will watch his day, l'darisechem, for generations, this is an eternal statute. Barishon, in the first month, Ba'arba Asayayim, in the 14th day, L'chodesh Ba'arev, and of that month in the evening, as evening falls, Teichlu Matzos, you'll eat matzahs. Until Yom Echad Ve'esrim L'chodesh Ba'arev, until the evening of the 21st day, you will have them. So, from the 15th of Erev which means the 14th when it comes night, and then the 21st when the day is going out, and then it becomes erev of the 22nd day. Those 7 days, that's when you're gonna have matzahs. Shivas yam, the 7 days. So or lo yimatzu v'techem. It must not be found in your house. Levin ki kol oichel machmetzes, and anyone who eats chametz v'nechus nefesh ahi, his soul be cut off. Me'adas Yisrael, from the congregation of Yisrael. Again, the religious aspect, adas. Bager, the alien, ube'ezrach, and the resident aretz of the land. Kol machmetzes lo yisechelu, all chametz you should not eat. B'chomosh v'yisechem, in all your dwellings, soichlu matzahs, you'll eat matzahs. I mean, even if you go away, even if you travel, even if you leave Eretz Yisrael, even if you're going anywhere, it's on Pesach, you have to eat matzahs, no chametz, even if you leave your house. Until now, kept saying, batechem, batechem, batechem. So therefore it says, okay, you know what? My house is clean from chametz, but I'm going to go to a hotel in Cancun, and I'm going to chametz it up. No. 7 days you eat matzahs, you will not have chametz for 7 days, and anywhere you go, no chametz. So now there's a break, and Moshe calls all the elders of Yisrael, and he says to them, so Hashem gave him the instruction. Mishku, so you'll gather a chu when you take lechem tzayin from the flock, from your family, shachtu a Pesach, and you'll sacrifice the Pesach. You're going to take a bundle of hyssop, you're going to dip them into blood, asher basaf, that's in the basin, vigatem el hamashkaif, and you're going to touch them, you're going to wipe them on the lintel, on the crossbeam, the shtei mezuzos, and the 2 posts, min hadam, from the blood, al basaf, that's in the basin, the atem, and you, loy teisu ish, you cannot have anyone go out, once they do that, they go into the house and not leave until the morning. Again, proving once again that even though they were trying to be driven out at night, when did they leave? By day. The Avar Hashem, and Hashem will pass, to give a plague to Mitzrayim. Again, Negef is plague, Makos is to strike. And when he sees the blood on the lintel, the Ashtei mezuzos, and the 2 posts, of course Hashem said it the other way. Hashem said 2 mezuzos, and then the mashkaif, Moshe Rabbeinu switched it around. Okay, upasach Hashem ala Pesach, and Hashem will pass over this doorway. The lo yitin amashkes, and you will not give the destroyer lavai el batechem to go to your house to make a plague. Although Hashem was doing it, and Hashem did it himself, and Hashem ani v'loy malach, ani b'loy saraf, ani b'loy mashkes. Still, Moshe Rabbeinu talked in terms of mashkes because it was in a way the people can understand. But obviously Hashem did it himself, as the psukim very, very clearly say. Ushmartem as hadavar hazeh, and you should watch this matter, you should guard this matter, l'chak, for a statute, l'chak for you, l'vanech, and your children, Adam forever. V'haya ki savayu el aretz, when you go to the land, and before talked about the ezrach of the land, who is a citizen? We have no land yet, how can you be a citizen? We're talking about haaretz of the land. Haaretz is no longer Eretz Yisrael. Haaretz plain is always Eretz Yisrael. Haaretz is Eretz Yisrael, the land. Eretz Yisrael is haaretz, the land. So v'haya ki savayu el aretz, when you go to the land, asher yitin Hashem lachem kasher diber, like Hashem's going to bring you, like He said, ushmartem es avodas hazos, you're going to do this service, you're going to guard the service. V'haya, it'll be ki yomru aleichem banechem, or whether your children are going to ask you by the seder over there. The children are going to ask you, ma what is this avodah that to you that you're doing? V'yamartem, you tell them zevach Pesach, this is the holy Pesach sacrifice. Hu Hashem for Hashem, Asher Pesach, that He passed over. Abate b'nei Yisrael, the doorways of b'nei Yisrael, mitzrayim, but nakfu, and he gave a plague, yes, mitzrayim, v'yes matenu hit. So from our houses he saved, and the yikad and the kneeled down, the yishtacha, when they bowed. Much earlier, the Torah said that the b'nei Yisrael listened to Moshe and they all bowed down to Hashem. This is the time. This is where it's coming out to be, right on the eve of Geula. Why did Hashem have to specifically tell them to put blood on the door? Hashem did it by himself. Hashem did Makas B'choros by himself. So why did Hashem need a sign? Signs, like any other sign, were really for B'nai Yisrael. It was more to show B'nai Yisrael that you are going to show that you are with me. You're going to put the blood on the door to show that you're with me. It's a banner. It's an outward mezuzah. It's something showing that I am for Hashem. And therefore, although there really was no fear of retaliation from the mitzrayim, because at this point, the mitzrayim probably were all subjugated to Bnei Yisrael, and Moshe already was a man of great esteem that went out according to all Egyptians, However, this was a sign, a offering, a symbol of their faith in Hashem to put their blood outside the door, knowing that they're going to stay inside, and that is what's going to protect them. The blood also symbolized the blood of Pesach and the blood of Dam, Mila, which a person can have a Korban Pesach if they're not moil. So those two things together is something that saves Bnei Yisrael. It's a small gesture to show that there's faith in Hashem and we're part of a covenant. Yelchu, and they went, the elders went, for Yasu, Bnei Yisrael, and the whole Bnei Yisrael did, Kasher Tziva Hashem, like Hashem commanded, as Moshe Aaron, Kenasu, so they did. They all went, and they all took a set, whether it was from a sheep or whether it was from a goat, and they watched it in their houses from the 10th of the month. And from the 10th of the month, they went to the 14th of the month. And the 14th of the month, they sacrificed it. They caught the blood in a basin. They took hyssop, and they painted the blood on the two mezuzos, on the two doorposts, and on the mantle, on the crossbeam. And they sat down, and they had their seder, and they ate it with matzah, and they ate it with maror, and they made sure there was not left over to the morning. And they spoke about how lucky they were that freedom is nigh. And it was at midnight. Vashem hika et kol bechar mitzrayim. That Hashem struck every bechar in the land of Mitzrayim, the whole country of Mitzrayim. Bechar Parai, from the elder of Parai, Yoshev al Kisa, that sat on the throne, ad bechar hashvi, until the bechar of the captive, Asher Beis Habar, that's in the prisons and dungeons, the whole bechar behema, and every also firstborn of the animal. Now, Parai very well might have been a firstborn himself, but the Torah doesn't say it. And anyway, Hashem wasn't striking Paro. Hashem was striking Paro's firstborn. Usually the firstborn would end up being Pharaoh, but not every Pharaoh was the firstborn. They actually might have had a daughter before, and therefore he's a son after a daughter, etc., etc. But Yakam Parai Laila, and Parai woke up in the night. Why did Parai wake up in the middle of the night? What was Parai doing? Parai did not know about this makkah. As we discussed earlier, there was no warning for this makkah, because Parai told Moshe, the day I see your face, I am going to kill you. So Moshe did not see Paro's face anymore after the makkah of Choshech. Yakam Parai Laila, so Parai got up in the middle of the night. Him, the Chol Avodav, and all his courtesans, all servants of Chol Mitzrayim, the entire Mitzrayim. But the heat, and there was a great cry in Mitzrayim. Ki ain't biased, because not a single house in Sham makes did not have death in it. And he called to Moshe and Aaron, like we said before, when it says El Moshe or Aaron, when it's El, then he called them to him. Then he called to them and he summoned them, and then they came to the palace. Here, he sent a message to them. And he sent to Moshe and Aaron, Lila at night, when it's still night, he still sends the messenger. He says, Kumu, get up, Tzu, and go mitoichami, from amongst my nation. Gam atem, gam b'nei Yisrael, also you, also the whole entire b'nei Yisrael, uluchu, and go. Ivdus Hashem, and serve Hashem, kidaberchem, like your words, like you had asked the entire time, that let them come and serve me. Shalach esami v'yavduni. So this is what Paro was saying. Fine, you want to go out, you want to serve your God, go. Gam tzoinchem, also your flock. Gam bekarchem, also your herd. Kechu te kasher dibartem, like you said, v'leichu, and go. Ubeirachtem gam oisi, and also bless me. I'm not going to give you animals, but also bless me when you go have a festival to your God. And also the Egyptian people themselves grabbed a hold. They were strong with the people. Lemahert, for them to quicken them. The Shalchem and Arz to send them from the land. They said, Kulona Mesa, all dying. They didn't even wait for Paro. They didn't even know what the message was from Paro. Forget about Paro. They themselves got up. They ran to Goshen. Ran to the neighbors. They said, go, get out of here. There's death everywhere. Just go. We don't need you here. We don't want you anymore. We'll deal with Paro. You just go and get out. And the lifted as Petzekai Terem Yechmat, their dough before it became Chametz, Mishraisam Tzuras Bisim Loisam, and they got their kneading bowls and they put them into their clothes, Al Shimchem, they put it on their shoulders. So you can think, one second, this is the famous pasuk that says they baked matzahs on their shoulders in the heat of the day. It's not what it's talking about. This is actually at night. It's not even happened. They didn't bake yet. We're going to talk about them baking matzahs. They never baked matzahs on their shoulders, and that's why we have matzahs, because it couldn't rise. The Torah never says that. The Torah says specifically, they eat matzah. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu told them to eat matzah. He already told them, matzah mar, eat with the Karm Pesach. They already knew they had to eat matzah on that first night before they went out of Mitzrayim. So and they already told that they're going to eat matzahs always on this night. Not because the next day they happen to have on their shoulders and a big in the heat. That didn't happen, at least not according to the Torah. Uvnei Yisrael, and the Bnei Yisrael also Kedvar Moshe, did according to Moshe, the Yishalom mitzrayim, and they asked from the Egyptians, Klei Kesef, silver vessels, Klei Zol, and gold vessels, V'Semlois, and also clothing, exactly like Hashem predicted, exactly like Moshe said, so they did. Hashem nasan chein ha'am, and Hashem gave grace to the nation, V'nei Mitzrayim, in the eyes of Mitzrayim, V'Shalium, whatever they would request it, V'Yanatzlu es Mitzrayim, and they emptied out Mitzrayim. Yisu b'nei Yisrael, and the morning b'nei Yisrael traveled me Ramsei Sukkoisa, from Ramsei Sukkoisa. So it was Sukkos, and the reason why it's called Ramses, like we said earlier, is that 40 years later, when Moshe Rabbeinu gave the Torah to b'nei Yisrael before they went into Eretz Yisrael, that time it was called Ramses, because then that's when Ramses II came the Pharaoh, but until then it was just storage cities, and apparently it would maybe have been called Sukkos. This was the edge of Goshen. Kishay Shmeyos Elef Ish, 600,000 people, Ragli, traveled, Gvarim of men, Levad Mitaf. This is excluding children, including women and children. So 600,000 men, then plus women, plus children. The Gam Erev Rav, and also a mixed multitude of people. This is Egyptians, this is foreigners, these are maidservants and slaves and servants of Paro that all joined Bnei Yisrael. Allah Itam went up with them, Vitzain, flock, ubakar, and cattle, Mikneh, Kaved, Ma'id, and their possessions were very, very great. Vayoifu es habatzek, and they baked the dough, asher haitziu mitzrayim, they took from Mitzrayim ugus matzos, they made matzos, ki loy chometz, because they weren't allowed to have chometz. Moshe Rabbeinu told them for 7 days you can't have chometz. So why did they bake matzos? Because they couldn't have chometz. So they bake matzos. What else are they going to bake? Ki garshu mitzrayim, when they were driven out of Mitzrayim, v'lo yachulu sameach, and they didn't have any time to prepare anything else. The gam tzeda loy asu lahem. They also had no other provisions, so all they were able to eat was matzos. They wanted to maybe prepare a nice roast beef stew or some other things, or vegetation, pick all the vegetables from their farms, etc., etc. Nope, they were driven out. They had no time to prepare, and they took with them matzahs. U'Moshe b'nei Yisrael, and b'nei Yisrael had dwelled, asher gashu Mitzrayim, when they dwelt in Mitzrayim, shloishim shana v'arba mea shana, 430 years. So how long were they in Mitzrayim? 430 years. There is, of course, the teaching based on the age of Yocheved and Amram and then Moshe. So it calculates if Yocheved was a Bas Levi, etc., how long Levi lived, how long Yocheved lived, how long Moshe lived, 210 years. However, Yocheved being a Bas Levi just meant she was Bas Levi. Didn't necessarily mean that she was the direct daughter of Levi. It could have been a daughter of Levi, a great-granddaughter of Levi. Further, the Torah seems to be very, very clear that they were there for 430 years. Now, we're going to learn all the pasuk. There's another way of reading it. Vahi mikesh loishim, when it was the end of 30 years, Vahi mikesh loishim shana, Varba shana, and it was the end of 430 years. And that exact day, Yatsu called Tzavos Hashem took out all his legions from Mitzrayim. So two things. Number one, it says Miketz Shloishim Shana V'Arba Meishana. Miketz means the exact end, so it's exactly 430 years. And V'Yibet means the exact date. Exact date from when? Number one is the promise was given to Avram for 400 years. It seems like it was 400 years or was it 430 years? At least 400 years. Because once the whole episode happened with Yosef, it could have been all bets were off and it was going to be 400 years from then and it ended up being 430 years. Other way of looking at it is Yitzchak was actually born on Pesach. How do we know that? When the visitors came to Avram, what did Avram want? Avram wanted to feed them meat, but he also wanted to feed them bread. He told Sarah to feed them bread. However, he never ended up giving them bread. Why? And it kept saying the pasuk Maher. So what happened was Avram knew, perhaps it was Nevuah, perhaps it was a tradition, regardless. So therefore, he didn't want to feed them bread after midday, so he kept hurrying. But unfortunately, the dough was not ready, and the bread was not ready by midday, so he ended up serving them a meal without giving them the bread. And further proof is that later on the day, that two messengers went to Shechem, to Lot, and what did Lot give them? Lot gave them a suda of matzos. That's what it says in the Torah. Give them matzos. Why would Lot give them matzos? Because that night is a night of matzos for all time. It was somehow tradition, taught perhaps all the way back to Adam Rishon, wherever it was. And that was exactly a year before Yitzchak was born. So therefore, Yitzchak was born on Pesach. So therefore, it's saying from 430 years from when Yitzchak was born, that's when this was. So those who calculate 210 years say the 430 years is actually from being Absarim. Okay, so it could be that the bris bein Absarim also was exactly 30 years before Yitzchak was born. It was on the day that Yitzchak was going to be born. Okay, so that's a good way to say it, that it was 430 years from the bris bein Absarim, or 400 years from Yitzchak was born. Or you could also read this, and the Torah is very insistent. It was 430 years from when Yosef, and possibly even from when Yaakov came down to Mitzrayim till they got out. Now, they weren't in Avdus this entire time. They weren't in indentured servitude, in hard labor, and they weren't oppressed all this time, obviously. But they were there living in Mitzrayim 430 years. There's one other way of interpreting 430 years. Goshen was supposed to be part of Eretz Yisrael, as promised to Avram Avinu. So it is possible that from that promise until now was 430 years, and they left Goshen, and they left it behind. So when it says they lived in Mitzrayim, it means really from the date of the promise, they already settled in Mitzrayim. And unfortunately, they had to leave on the circumstances, which we spoke about, I think, in the first year, where they left Mitzrayim and they ended up only having Eretz Yisrael and not this attachment of all the way from the Nile River. So maybe that was the 430 years. So there's lots of ways of interpreting it. It's a night of watching. That Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim. Hu halayla azeh, that very night. Hashem is to Hashem. Shiurim, where he guards l'chol b'nei Yisrael, l'dorayim for generations. He guards b'nei Yisrael. Hashem said to Moshe and Aaron, this is the statute of Pesach. Kol ben nechar, anyone who's a stranger, lo yuchabay, will not eat. The chol eved ish mitekesab, any servant that is bought with money, umalto isayin is a bris milah, azechlu bay, then he can eat it. Taishav, a person who dwells, v'shacher, and a person who rents, lo yuchabay, they cannot eat it. A bayis echad yechol, in one house should be eaten, lo yitzaisi min a bayis, shall be taken out of the bayis, min a basar, chutza, the meat should not be taken outside, the etzem, loy tishmeru bay. Also, the bones should not be broken. Chol adas Yisrael yasoy. All the congregation of Yisrael do this. V'chol yagur itcha, and anyone who dwells with you, ger, a alien, v'asa pesach Hashem, also pesach Hashem, him aloi, gets a bris milah, chol zachor, every male, v'az, and then yikrav lasois, then he can come close, and he can bring the carbon. V'haya ke'ezrach haaretz, will be exactly like a citizen in the land, v'chol ariel, and anyone who's not bris milah lo yechabay cannot eat it. Torah achas yila ezrach. There'll be one Torah, one set of laws for the resident, the citizen, lager hagar b'soicham, and also for the resident alien that lives amongst them. V'yasu kol b'nei Yisrael, and the whole b'nei Yisrael did kasher tziva Hashem, like Hashem said, as Moshe v'Aaron to Moshe and Aaron, ken yasu. So they did, and so they kept their first Pesach in Mitzrayim, and so they left. They traveled from Ramses Sukkos, and they traveled out. V'hi be'etzam yemazeh, and it was in that exact day, Haitzi Hashem b'nei Yisrael. Hashem took out from b'nei Yisrael, made Mitzrayim, from the land of Mitzrayim, al tzavaisam, all his legions. Obviously, it wasn't for 3 days. Obviously, it wasn't just to serve Hashem in the Midbar. They were free. Freedom was born on this day. And this is a story of the Geula. Obviously, there's a lot more to the story, but this is a story of them entering Mitzrayim, being subjugated in Mitzrayim, and now leaving Mitzrayim. Thank you for listening.